Hello, everyone. So I'm live for a little while for a little bit of conversation. I haven't been live for, I think, about a week. So I thought I'd hop on, see how everyone is, and have a little bit of a chit chat with you. Maybe get into a few little readings if we feel called for it. So let me know in the comments, guys, how your January has gone so far. We're about to end off the January 2021. It's been, I think it's been an intense month so far already. It's so many things going on around the world. But hey, isn't this a great year so far? What's been your perception of 2021 so far? Has it been positive? Is there something that you would like to improve this year that maybe you feel unfulfilled in an area of your life at the moment? Maybe there's something that you feel you would like to change or transform in some way throughout the next 11 months or so. So let me know in the comments, what is it in your life at the moment that you feel you would like to change? And know that whatever it is, you have the power to change it. You have the power to transform your life in any way that you like. It doesn't matter how big or small the transformations are. Ultimately, as human beings, this is the amazing thing about being human, is we have this ability to achieve absolutely anything we put our minds to, which is fantastic in so many ways. And it is incredible to be human. It really just is incredible to be human. And in a world as volatile as it is now, I find it incredible to see how many people actually come together. Although society is very divided at the moment, many of us are divided. There's political, there's, we've got political belief versus what are called conspiracy beliefs, and very divided society at the moment. But within that division, there is so much collaboration and community spirit within these various communities and factions of society. And people are really starting to kind of wake up to the fact that actually we are human and we've got to stick together. And if there's anything we can take from the situation in the world at the moment, whether you think of a pandemic or whether you think of, riots or protests or whatever, what's really happening at the moment is society is learning to work together again. Society is learning to say, hang on a minute, why are we fighting each other? Why are we being violent? Why are we hating each other? Well, let's work together, because ultimately we are one society. Although there's many societies within the ultimate society, or the collective society, if you like, we are ultimately one being and one system within a world that we are in. And finding the beauty in life is so important. And no matter where you look in life, no matter where you look in the world, you will find beauty. And if you're struggling to find beauty, just go out into your garden, or wherever you are, go outside of your house, pick up one stone, and maybe straight away you don't see the beauty. Maybe straight away you think, well, it's just a stone. Why is there beauty in that? But when you really look at the stone, when you hold it close and you really look at the detail, look at the texture, the colors, the feel, look at how that stone feels in your hand and how your body reacts to holding that stone. And maybe there's ants, maybe there's bugs on the stone. Look at that life. Look at how incredible that life is, that it just exists. It's independent of whether you're there or not. That life is there. And that's the beauty. That life will always go on. And something that's been, I think, at the forefront of all of our minds throughout the pandemic is death. And as a society, we've spent the last few hundred years separating ourselves from death. Death used to be something that we would all be very active in. We were like, well, I could die tomorrow. Okay, so let's have a good day today. And this was our mindset. We were very aware of our impending doom. And in a pending doom, there is, in recognizing that, hang on, I could die at any second. Any second my life could disappear and I will cease to exist in this life. That allows us to recognize that no matter what's happening in the moment, it's important not to get too caught up in the moment and to let it go as soon as possible, because we don't want to carry that, we don't want to ruin our potentially last moments with things that aren't going to help us to grow or don't make us happy. And this is something that we can take from the events recently, is to remember that life is precious, and to remember that no matter what happens in life, we can focus to the positive. And it's not about dismissing the negative or ignoring it, but about acknowledging it and saying, I acknowledge that it's there. I respect that it's there, but I'm not going to let it take over my life. I'm not going to let these negative aspects of life determine whether my life is negative or positive. And finding the good in the bad, because there's bad in the good and there's good in the bad. So why not find the good either way? Acknowledge the bad, always acknowledge the bad, but overrule that by the good. And it's such an important mindset to have, to focus on the positives and and again, this is something that potentially modern society doesn't want everyone to look at, because say you've got a mountain of debt. If you view that debt as your life is over, people own your life, it's stressful. It causes you so many problems, not just mentally, but emotionally, energetically. This creates so many energetic imbalances when you worry, when you stress, when you get all anxious and uppity about whatever's going on. So then looking at that and saying, okay, well, I'm in a bit of debt. Right, okay. But that doesn't mean somebody owns my life. It just means that somebody is chasing me for something that I need to give to them. Okay, so how can I work a way to overcome this obstacle and see it as an opportunity to grow and to say, okay, well, I'm in a bit of debt now. All right, but that's not going to determine my level of success or my level of income, and looking at it in a sense of, okay, debt doesn't make me poor. It just means that I owe something to somebody else. Because it's easy to think if you are in debt, and this is just one example, it's easy if you're in debt to feel like your life is owned by other people and that other people rule your life, because it's like, well, I can't do this because I owe this person this. I can't do that because I've got to pay that and I've got to pay this. And again, society is all about bills, and this is something that's been coming up and is at the forefront of a lot of discussions at the moment, which is the Great Reset. And the Great Reset, some people dubbed it as a conspiracy, but actually, if you go onto the World Economic Forum's website, you will see videos of the Great Forum. This is also being endorsed by the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, and the royal family. There's also videos of this on the royal family's YouTube as well. And the Great Reset. Now, they say you will own nothing and you will be happy about it. You will give up your freedoms. You will give up your rights in exchange for more. And again, this is kind of what we're talking about here is the fact that our lives in modern society are very much made to seem like other people own them. And we're now at a crossroads in society where we've got to decide whether we want to give our lives to others. And it is, there's companies out there already. You can either buy a washing machine outright, or you can pay a monthly subscription. They send you a washing machine. They send you your laundry detergent every single month, included in the price. But you never own the washing machine. But you use it. You don't own it. You'll be happy that you have it, but you don't own it. And this is what the Great Reset is going into, is you will own nothing, but you will be happy. Now, this is the end of private ownership. This is when corporate companies, governments, organizations, or if you would like to dub it, the elite, will own everything. And you will simply be a user. It's the same as, in the UK, if you own a car, you do not own the car. You are the keeper of the car. And the DVLA can seize the car at any moment if they see fit, if they see a reason that they can seize the car. You no longer own the car. It belongs to the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Agency or the government. And the Great Reset is causing a lot of concerns. And there's two ways to look at it. One is that we will be giving up our rights, we'll be giving up our lives, we'll be giving up everything we know in our modern globalized society to a small number of people, a small percentage of people. And that could be bad. That could be really, really bad. And people have, compared it to, enslavement, enslaving humanity, and, many other things. But there's another way to look at it as well. What if the Great Reset truly is just a global reset of society to end this destructive way that we've lived in? We've spent the last few hundred years consuming. And we have consumed so much of, say, the Amazon rainforest that, you look at how many species have gone extinct in recent times, and you look at how many trillions of trees we've cut down, it's unsustainable. And farming, there's a film on Netflix which goes through David Attenborough's it's a life on our planet by David Attenborough, and he talks about the differences that he's seen in the world since he's been alive, and since he's been exploring, he's explored everywhere on the planet pretty much. And he's said we need to change. The world is being destroyed at such a rate that we can't even see it. We're almost blinded by our ways. David Attenborough did a talk at the World Economic Forum, and he showed some footage from his series Our Planet, and it was with I think it was a walrus, and they were falling off a cliff because they were trying to huddle onto this really small piece of land because there was nowhere else for them to go to breed, and hundreds were just dying because they couldn't fit on this tiny piece of rock. And it really showed the impact of climate change and global warming and the effects of human activity on the planet, on the natural world. And the natural world relies on what's called symbiosis. And what this means is one creature or one animal will live in a way that supports every other animal around it. So, say a coral reef. A coral reef provides shelter and a home for small fish. And in exchange, the fish provide the coral reef with what it needs to survive. So the coral and the fish support each other in this circular fashion. So without the coral, the fish can't necessarily survive, and without the fish, the coral can't survive. And what we've been seeing in recent years is something which is called bleaching. The coral reefs around the world and the Great Barrier Reef as well, there's a huge impact, is starting to bleach, which is turning white. And what this is it expels all of the organisms from within it. And essentially what it's doing is dying. And this is because in recent times there has been warming in the ocean. And when we talk about global warming, most people don't even acknowledge the ocean. And the reason that we haven't seen massive changes on land is because the effects haven't reached land yet. What's happened is the oceans have been soaking up all of this heat, and suddenly the oceans can't hold any more heat. The oceans have warmed to a point where the coral is now being affected because it relies heavily on very stable temperatures, which has been stable for thousands of years. And now we are actually overdue an extinction event. And what's happening is human activity is speeding up this natural process. Now, every so many thousands of years, we have an ice age, and we have a catastrophic environmental change or a shift that means life is tested to its extreme and to its limit, and only the strongest survive. And what's happening with human activity is we're speeding up that process faster than ever before. And if this doesn't change, we will by this time next century, by 2120, we will have used up the Earth's resources and destroyed the planet to a point where we will not survive. We have less than 100 years to solve this crisis. Actually, we have less than that. We have less than 10 years before the damage is almost permanent. But there is a solution, and the Great Reset is a potential solution for all of these problems. The Great Reset could potentially transform human civilization into a way that is in more harmony or even symbiosis with the natural world. But one great factor with this, and I know veganism has been a discussion that many people have tried to avoid over the years, and it has become something that people, and again, mainstream media has labeled vegans as arrogant, as potentially narcissistic or ignorant, and it's actually not the case. Most vegans don't judge other people on their consumption of meat or vegetables or whatever you choose to eat. Because at the end of the day, you choose to eat whatever you feel. That's a personal opinion. One person might like Brussels sprouts, one person doesn't. One person likes meat, one person doesn't. It is a personal choice. However, the crisis that we have on the planet is farming. Farming uses up most of the natural habitat that is on land, which means there is less habitat for the natural wildlife. And wildlife now accounts for something like, I think it's about 4% of species on Earth. 4% is wild because we've domesticated. We have billions of birds around the world right now, right this second. And the thing is, they're domesticated chickens in cages. And the methane that they produce, and cows, sheep, goats. Think of every animal that we farm on Earth around the globe. And again, it's hypothesized that the last ice age was brought around by the dinosaurs farting because the amount of methane that they produce. So they fart, and it eventually triggers a climate shift or an ice age. So the whole of the northern hemisphere is covered in a sheet of ice. And that ice from the last ice age is almost gone. In the summer now, the Arctic ice is almost completely disappeared. Antarctica is melting faster than ever before in our human history. And this is causing huge problems, along with the warming of our planet because of the gases. We are burning millions of years of fossil fuels, which is creating a blanket in the atmosphere, which is heating. And this is the greenhouse effect. We are burning so much fossil fuels and releasing so much gas into the air. Our world is warming up, which is being absorbed by the oceans. And the oceans support all life on the planet. If we affect the oceans in this negative way that we have been so far, all life will cease to exist within a couple centuries, unless, well, some life will survive, of course, as it always does, but the majority of life as we know it will cease to exist in the next couple hundred years unless we change our ways. And this can be done by simply changing the way that we live. And as David Attenborough put it in his show, David Attenborough, A Life on Our Planet, he says that one way to change that is to change our diet. Now, fish is abundant. There are ways of fishing that do not harm the oceans, which certain countries around the world have started to implement, banning on shipping. So they're banning shipping in certain areas in their oceans or in their territories as a way of preserving species and allowing the fish to recuperate and to recover due to overfishing. And if we use this technique around the world, and the UN is currently in the process of creating the largest wildlife sanctuary over the, I think it's in the Atlantic Ocean in the world, a huge sanctuary, no fishing or poaching at all. And this will preserve the oceans, the ocean life that we have ultimately been overfishing to the point of almost extincting certain species of sea life. And the Great Reset is one that potentially could solve all of our problems around the globe. Imagine if we could take a society that has already solidified itself in a globalist economy. And again, this is the collapse of the global economy at the moment with the pandemic. And potentially there's theories that the pandemic is being used to transform society, which I'm not going to give an opinion either way. But it is possible that is the case, that the pandemic is being used to alter society or alter the way that society runs. And this is actually what's needed. We do need to change the way that society runs because we are unsustainable. If we carry on the way we are, by the end of this century, millions or even billions of people will be starving to death. The climate will increase by a degree. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think of a planet's stability, a 1 degree shift, which it already has done in less than 100 years, the planet has already warmed by 1 degree, which is a big problem. On a planetary scale, temperature is extremely sensitive. And if you alter just half a degree, you can begin to start to see problematic shifts in the ecosystems. And if we see a 2 or 3 degree incline in our global temperature or ocean temperature, life would become very, very unstable. So the Great Reset could potentially be as a solution for all of this. Shut down society and restart it. Well, that's what's happened already. But is it all good? Is there an alternative agenda behind the Great Reset? Or is the Great Reset a genuine and honest solution to all of our problems? This is a question that we don't know the answer to, and there's no way that we can know until it happens. The question is for society is, are we willing as a collective to give up rights in exchange for others? Are we willing to give up property in exchange for freedom? And in a sense, this works. If you don't own anything, you have freedom because you can just say, oh, well, I don't want it anymore. Have it back. But it just means that you don't own anything. And if you think of like vinyl, you have vinyl, you own it. Or you own a CD, you own it. You own that music. You've paid for it. You can do what you want with it because you own the CD. Whereas now we have subscription services, Apple Music, Spotify. We rent. We never own. If you have Spotify, you don't own any music on there. If you have a YouTube subscription, you don't own any video on YouTube. If you basically have any subscription, you don't own it, but you are using it. And this is what they're saying. You will own nothing, but you will be happy because you're happy listening to music on Spotify. You're happy watching movies on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Disney Plus, but you don't own any of that. If you want to own it, you've got to pay more money to own it. But originally, we would just pay for things and we'd never pay for it again. Now, you pay probably hundreds of pounds a year or more just on subscription services to use things that you will never, ever own and can be taken away from you at any moment somebody else decides. So really, is this the way society should go? Because we have got into this mindset that we can pay for anything. We own everything. We own the world. And we have fallen out of symbiosis with the rest of the world. If you look at hunter-gatherers, and there are still some hunter-gatherers in rainforest communities around the globe and in South America as well, in Central America, there are some hunter-gatherer tribes, and even off the coast of India as well, there's hunter-gatherer tribes that live how we used to live thousands of years ago. And they have survived for thousands of years, isolated from the rest of the world. They haven't died from diseases. They've survived. They live to pretty good ages, potentially more than the average person lives to today. But they're hunter-gatherers, which we see as primitive. We see as prehistoric. We see it as an ancient way of living. But to them, it's their modern life. And they've lived this way for thousands of years, surviving away from modern humanity or without seeing the evolution of society. And what you see with hunter-gatherer tribes is that they will only take from the earth exactly what they need. And how many times have you gone into a supermarket and you've seen boxes and boxes and boxes of fruit, of veg, of meat, anything you want, you can have it. You can have anything you want. You don't need it, you just want it. And this is how society plays on our greed, because we just want. But our basic needs are far less than this. How many times have you done a food shop and a week later you're having to throw a few things away because it's gone moldy, it's gone horrible, it's gone bad, it's gone sour? This is because we are taking more than what we actually need. So as a society, it's really important to stop the permanent effects of our world. It's really important that we begin to be more conscious about what we're consuming and about what we're taking from the earth. Because if we continue to take more than the earth can provide, which last year by August, humanity had consumed all of the natural resources from the earth. So from August to the end of December, we had used up all of the, from January to August, we had used up in just 7 months, 8 months, all of the natural resources that the earth could provide for 7 billion people. So for the last 4 months of the year, we were living on surplus. We were living on resources that didn't actually exist naturally. And this just illustrates how delicate our society really is. Because every single year, that's getting less and less. By next year, it may be July, it may be June. We may be using up all of the natural resources in just half the time that we need. Now imagine if half of the planet had to go hungry because the other half of the planet was so greedy that it just took until there was nothing left. This is what society is already doing right now. And this isn't to say you have to go vegan, you have to give up meat, or it's not to say that. but it's just to say to consume wisely. And there is a calling on supermarkets and trade organizations to cut down on the amount of waste. And again, plastic pollution. This has been a thing in the UK recently with Brexit, is our plastic waste. And there's a loophole in the UK government's contract, post Brexit, that we can still export all of our plastic waste that will never be recycled. We just export it to poorer countries and let them deal with it. And in the third world, pollution is a huge problem. Waste entering the ocean, entering the waterways, sanitation. They are taking water from the same place that their sewage enters. And there is disease rampant in the third world because of this. Hundreds of children die every day from diarrhea, or thousands even die from diarrhea every single day. And these solutions can all be met. These solutions can all be brought into fruition if the rest of humanity played ball and says, let's stop our destructive ways and let's find a better way to live. Let's find a better way to run society that's not going to be at the expense of billions of other people. You look at how we live in the US, in the UK, and you look at places like India and Bangladesh and many, many communities all across Africa. We have very few people compared. India has over 1 billion people, yet doesn't enjoy the same quality of life that we do in the UK or the United States. We have more food in the US and the UK than we will ever need. We could export all of this surplus food to the third world, to poorer nations. We could export all of this. We don't need it. And we would save billions of lives in the long run by consuming wisely, by recycling properly, by disposing of our waste properly in a way that isn't harming the natural world and isn't harming the human world. The thing is, humans have this innate ability to say, I want it now, I can have it now, that's all I care about. And it's time that, as a collective, we stop and think, I want it, but do I need it? Do I need to have a new car? That, do I need to have a Ferrari? What is the meaning of having a Ferrari? I'll tell you this. The want for expensive things is a societal construct. Society says if you want to look good, you've got to, if you want to be seen as successful, you've got to look successful. Well, let's look at somebody like Keanu Reeves. Still rides the train, wears normal clothes just like you and me. He gives away his millions to cast and crew. He takes pay cuts to allow production companies to hire A-list actors for the films. He pays for, I think he paid for the entire cast of Matrix to have Harley Davidsons. He's very generous, very, very successful. Perhaps one of the most successful actors in the world. However, he doesn't live like he is successful because he recognizes that success is in the mind. Success is not something physical. Success isn't, I have a sports car, I'm successful. I have £1 million in the bank, I'm successful. I have a big house, I'm successful. That's what society teaches us to believe. Whereas in actual fact, success is how you see it in here. If you see yourself as successful now and you create that abundance and success mindset, you will really begin to see changes in your perceptions of reality. And this is talking a lot on the law of attraction or manifestation. And it is another way to look at it. Perhaps you're not just creating things from energy. Perhaps you're not just manifesting things from nothing. Perhaps all that's really happening is your perception of what you're creating is changing. So if you say, I've manifested this opportunity, did you manifest the opportunity from nothing? Or did you change your mindset to look for the opportunities that you would have missed previously? So this is a more level way, a level approach to looking at manifestation or the law of attraction, is our perceptions create our reality. And if you see, and this is the same with mental health at its deepest core, if you see yourself as depressed, if you tell yourself you are depressed, if you tell yourself you are unhappy, you are unloved, you're unworthy, you will be that. You are what you become. You think. What you think about most is what you are in a state of becoming. And this is how you program and reprogram your mind, because our minds are computers. They are biological computers that are designed to be programmed. And if we don't actively, and this is something that the education system does not teach, is how to program the mind. Because if we don't program our mind, it will program itself. It will be programmed by everything else outside of us. Whereas if we then take the reins and say, actually, no, I'm not going to be influenced by what you tell me. I am going to change my perceptions and program my mind myself. And this is, every single successful person on the planet will tell you this. People like Tony Robbins, even the likes of Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, if you look at all the successful people around the globe, they will all tell you the same thing. It is how you see it. If you want to be successful, you have to be successful now. There's no good saying I'll be successful when I've earned 6 figures. If I earn 6 figures, I'll be successful, because you're never going to be successful that way. It takes a success mindset to be successful now. And how this relates to changing the way we live in society is very simple. Changing our perceptions. If we see it as, I can have it, so I'm going to have it, we're not going to change. But if we stop and think, okay, I can have it, but do I need it? Does this make me a better person? Does this make me successful? Do I really need this, or can I just give myself something from myself? It's kind of like saying, if you buy me a car, I'll be happy. Well, why can't you be happy without the car? What says that car will bring you happiness? What says anything will bring you happiness? And this is something that I teach in my coaching, is happiness comes from within. And unless you can find happiness from within yourself without any external influence, you will never be truly happy. And look at it this way. If you say, I will be happy when I've earned £1 million, when you earn £1 million, you're going to say, I will be happy when I've spent this £1 million on a new house. Okay. You buy a house. I'll be happy when I fill this house with nice stuff. So you fill the house with nice stuff. And then you say, I'll be happy when it'll constantly go on. Everything. You'll constantly want something else, and something else. You will never be truly satisfied with what you already have. And again, this just feeds into the law of attraction, or manifestation, success mindsets, or transforming the way that society functions, is seeing that actually we don't need anything other than what we need to support our life. So what you need is, you need enough food, enough water, and enough warmth to survive. Okay. And this isn't saying that as a society we have to go back to just surviving, because actually we can thrive just on the things that help us survive. And this is success mindset. Because if you look into communities that we would call poor, and there's a story, I'll take you through a story before I explain this. So a father took his son to the countryside, and this boy lived in a big manor house in the middle of a city, a big house. They had maids and servants, and they had everything they could ever wish for. Never want for anything. It was just there. As soon as they said, I want it, it was there. So he took his son to the countryside, and he said, son, I want to show you how poor people live. I want to show you what it's like to live as a poor person. So they went to this big country house, or a small country house, should I say, a little cottage in the middle of fields. There's nothing there. They were farmers. They were shepherds. They lived off the land. They didn't really have any money. They just grew what they needed from the ground. They looked after their animals and their farm, and they took only what they needed from the land. And the boy spent a week there, understanding how they lived, understanding how they farm and how they collect water and how they grow their own food, and how every night when it gets cold, they huddle up as a family by the fire to keep warm. And at the end of the week, it was time for them to go home. So the father said to the son, okay, son, I hope you've learned something about poor people this week. I hope you've learned something valuable. And the son said, yes, I have. I've understood how poor we are. and they're rich. And the father couldn't understand. So he questioned him. He said, why do you think we're poor? They have no money. They're poor. And the son's reply left him speechless, because he said, well, we have walls around our garden to keep people out. And these people have endless fields from horizon to horizon that they can use as their own. They have no boundaries. We have locks to keep people out and keep us in. They have family to keep each other safe. They have their mindsets, their love. They have companionship that keeps them safe. They don't need locks to keep people out because they're safe just with their family. And then he said, we have all the food that we want to stop us from feeling anything. We can eat as much as we want until we can no longer feel, but they have the food that helps them to feel good. They respect where they live, and where they live respects them. We have a dog. They have an entire farm of animals that they can take care of and that they can appreciate and love for the rest of their life. We live in a city with foul-smelling air and noise. They have birds, animals, clean, fresh air. And he said, we have a tap that gives us endless amounts of water, but it doesn't taste nice. They have a river that gives them fresh, clean water all day, every day, and it's completely free. So you see, the poor of the world are actually the richest because they understand what they really need. In the Western world, we're very blinded by what we really need. So we find it. We find what we need in other things. Fancy cars, fancy clothes, jewelry, diamonds. And again, the only reason why is gold or a diamond valuable? Who says a gold, who says that this bottle isn't more valuable? Who says that this mug isn't more valuable than a diamond? Or who says that? The people who own the banks, the people who run the society, what you would call the elite, say a diamond is the most valuable thing on earth because we say it is. And it may be one of the toughest materials on earth, but that doesn't mean it's the most valuable. Because what value does it bring to us? And this is the thing. When we place value on things, what we're really saying is, how much value do I personally give it? How much does it support me? And in reality, water, although we see it as something as a necessity, it is the most valuable resource on earth. And it should be free. We shouldn't have to pay for water. And you will notice the difference between town or city water and natural spring water. And we see that modern society is really changing the natural world and changing the way that it functions. And our recycling system, the natural way of recycling things, as you'll see, the earth does all on its own. The feces go into the earth to fertilize the soil, and any feces that go into the water end up at the bottom of the riverbed, and they eventually turn into fuel, or it's everything supports everything else. And what humans do is we say, okay, well, we're going to invent a toilet that carries your waste down a pipe and it will disappear. But in reality, what's happening is it's being dumped in huge amounts. And we're not recycling it how we should. It should be recycled properly, like how the earth. And this is the new systems that are coming up, is we're starting to copy or mimic how the natural world recycles water, recycles sewage. And this is how we should have lived in the first place, is living by the laws of nature. Whereas what we've done is we've created our own version of nature, which is why we call it human nature. We have nature and human nature, two very different things. But what we're starting to see now is a return to nature. And this is kind of, you could say this is the link to the rise of spirituality and the rise of people turning towards spirituality or spiritual beliefs. because we are turning to a more natural way of living. We're almost going from, it's almost like we've gone from hunter gatherers and then we're going to advanced civilization, and then advanced civilization is going to hunter gatherer, because it's almost like we're starting to say, well, actually, I don't want to live in part of this society that just destroys the planet. I want to create my own little community. And this is the rise of community living as well. Huge rise in community living, especially since the 60s. And this was the rise of the hippie movement, which was saying, society is not right. Society is controlled, it's manipulated, it's unnatural, and it's cruel. And this was kind of the concept with the hippie movement, is saying there's a better way to live. We can live with more peace. We are the only species that go around blowing people up and killing people just because we can. We're the only species that tries to dominate the entire planet as if we own it. And again, the Great Reset could be a solution to all of this, but it could be something very bad at the same time. And nobody really knows. Nobody really knows at the moment what is happening. There's a lot of speculation as to what the Great Reset is. Some people do believe that it's a form of mass control. Some people think it could potentially be a mass genocide or depopulation plan. And others simply think it's just a transformation of society. Because there is absolutely no denying that society has to change. There is no denying that we are unsustainable. And this has been at the forefront of everyone's minds for at least the last 5 years or so. And climate change, there's two ways to look at this. It is a natural cycle. And nobody's saying that humans are causing climate change, because it is a natural cycle. The Earth changes its climate every few thousand years. However, the burning of fossil fuels, as we have been since the Industrial Revolution, has sped up the process. And that's what we're really talking about. When we say climate change, we're not saying we've created, we're changing the climate. What we're saying is we're speeding up the natural cycle of the climate, which is what's causing all the problems around the world. The 1 degree warming of the oceans, and the potential by the end of the century, a 2 or 3 degree rise in global temperatures, purely because of human activity influencing how our natural world performs in its natural environment, and how wildlife is being affected with this as well, because wildlife is being hugely affected by human activity. And you just have a look at poaching, deforestation, floods. And again, the floods are linked directly to climate change, because the global warming is melting the ice, which raises water, which ultimately destroys habitats or kills off species. And I think it was something like 1 million species were affected in the Australian fires last year. And again, those fires, the bushfire in Australia, and even the fires all over the states on the Western America, on the United States last year, that is all directly linked to human activity, speeding up this natural process of climate change, climate shift. And we are overdue a big catastrophic event around the world, which is the even more concerning thing, because we're speeding up a process that happens anyway, and we're already overdue a big event that could challenge the survival of the human race. So it is really important to change how society functions. But my question for everyone watching, and everyone on watching later on as well, what do you think is the solution? Do you think a reset of society is the solution? Do you think we need to reset society and change how we live on a global level? Or do you think it should be localized changes that are, decided by the people, as opposed to by big organizations or companies, or by the elite, or by governments, whatever you want to, give that name to? Because it is this question of, we've had these stories of Illuminati and the New World Order, or it's been dubbed Agenda 21 for many decades now. And this year, or even last year, the last couple of years, they said the Great Reset, beginning in 2021. 2021 is kind of the year that they've linked it to. And it has backed up what's been said for the last, I guess, 100, 200 years with the Illuminati, with the New World Order, as it's so called. And it's that question of, is this a New World Order? Well, yes. But is it bad? Because you could say a new world order is bad because we don't know what's going to happen. But the world order does need to renew because we're living in an old world order that doesn't fit us anymore. We're living in an old world order that says you can have whatever you want because it's there. Whereas the new world order says you can have what you want, doesn't mean you should because it's not there forever. We got to protect it. And the big change, and this was where and again, many people believe that we never left Earth and we've never gone to space. But let's say, for argument's sake, that we did. Now, imagine being a society that has only ever seen local. It's only ever seen, what it's seen in front of its eyes, here and now. Can't see the bigger picture because it's never seen the bigger picture. And all of a sudden, we leave our home planet and we suddenly appear in space, in the blackness of space. And we look back and we see this blue marble, vulnerable, alone, delicate, fragile, with all its beauty, just drifting in the void of space. Suddenly, there is no you and me, there is us. And this is how we really do need to see our world. There isn't black, white, gay, straight, whatever. There is no such thing as race. And again, you can say, yeah, maybe biologically there is a thing as race, biodiversity. Okay, whatever. But we are all human species. That's kind of like saying cats should fight because one's ginger and one's white and one's gray. You don't see cats fighting because they're different colors. Maybe they just don't like each other. Sure. And the same with dogs. Ultimately, dogs are all the same species. Yeah, they might fight with each other over territory. Again, it's out of fear. A dog will attack another dog out of fear. But you can train a dog. And when the dog's trained and understands that actually it's okay if another dog comes up to you, it's okay if another dog comes into your house, it doesn't mean that you have to be scared. You can welcome them in. Company. You never know what you might have in common. And this is the shift in society where we're saying, actually, do you know what? Maybe, I'm American, you're Russian, you're from the UK, you're from here, whatever. Okay, well, let's get on because at the end of the day, we live on the same bloody planet. And if aliens one day invade the planet, or maybe aliens just want to come here, or maybe they're already here and give us whatever, will we approach them as, oh, okay, right. Well, you're in America. Okay, don't go over to Russia because they're bad people. Do you think the aliens are going to care? Do you think aliens would care what country you're from? No, they would say, well, you're human. All we care about is you're human. Hello. Hi, how are you? Here's some technology. What have you done? So we're the only ones on this planet who really care about what race what race we are, where we're from, what our beliefs are. And it's interesting when you start looking at beliefs because beliefs really are. It's good that we have beliefs because they give us diversity, and that's what they are. They are diverse perceptions. Now, one person may say, okay, I believe in God because I have seen a miracle. And this was God. I prayed for God to make this miracle happen. And in front of my eyes, he made a miracle happen. So for this person, God is very real because he's witnessed it with his own eyes. For another person, they say, I visualized my dream life for 5 years and now I'm living it. The universe provided for me. So for this person, the universe is the creator. Another person may say, I did it myself. There is no God. There is nothing in charge. You either do it yourself or you don't get it at all. And for this person, there is nothing in charge. For another person, they may say, I prayed, I visualized, and I did it myself. There is a God. God is within the universe, but you still have to do it yourself. And for this person, there is a God. There is a universal energy in charge, or that controls everything, and that you can manipulate that universal energy to create what you want. But ultimately, you still have to do it yourself. So for this person, all three are right. But that doesn't mean that any one of them is wrong, because they could all be right. And this is the thing. All three can be right, but all three of them will argue that each other are right and the others are wrong. The person who believes in God will say, no, there is only God. There is no universal energy. It is controlled by God. Whereas, the other person will say, well, no, you've got to do it yourself. There is no such thing as God. There is no universal energy. You can't change that. You have to do it yourself. But what if they're all right? What if all religions around the world are saying the same story, just in a different way? What if every single religion around the globe is telling us the same story, the same list of principles and morals and symbolisms for thousands of years, but we've just misunderstood what they're saying? And as we branch out to different civilizations and different societies throughout history, we've, again, like Chinese whispers, we've misunderstood or mistranslated what these religious texts are actually saying. And when you look at the Sumerian texts tell us the Anunnaki, which was what they would call the gods. They said the gods came down from the skies. To put it basically, they interbred with humans. They altered human DNA, and they wanted to mine for gold to repair the atmosphere on Nibiru. They created humans and the Sumeria, which later became known as the Garden of Eden. The humans originally, according to the Sumerians, were made infertile. So we couldn't breed. We relied on their genetic creation, the Anunnaki genetically creating us. And then one day they said, well, why don't we just let them breed on their own? Then we don't have to worry about them. They can raise their own young and they can work for us, and then they die. And then the new generation continues. We don't have to create them. So that's what they did. And then we got greedy. And this is with the apple, the forbidden fruit. The forbidden fruit is the fruit of the loin. Okay, so the fruit of the loin, when we indulge in sex and when we indulge in our own reproduction, we overrun Sumeria or Sumer. And the Anunnaki then said, well, they got too much. They're uprising. They want out. Okay, we're going to go because they're getting too powerful. They're getting too big. There's too many of them. We're just, that's it. We're done. We've got enough gold. We can piss off home. And so they left humans to evolve on their own. And this is what the Sumerians tell us. And whether that's right or wrong, we can't really know for sure. But the same story is repeated consistently, more or less, around the ancient world, in that the gods came down from the skies. And again, there's ancient alien or ancient astronaut theorists suggest that gods of antiquity were actually ancient aliens that came to Earth, gave technology, gave wisdom, shared in their ways, and actually helped humanity to become who it is now. And there is an element of our human genome or our genetic makeup that doesn't quite make sense. And it's been theorized that this is because the Anunnaki really did engineer our DNA. And this kind of sheds light on the stories of mythical creatures such as the Minotaur. And what's the Minotaur? Half man, half creature, which says there was genetic engineering between two species at play. So the ancient story, the stories from antiquity and even before, pre-antiquity, tell us the same stories of how the gods came to Earth, played with humans, created more humans, and played with genetics, and they came down in flying saucers and gave them technology. And then all of a sudden, around similar times, we have the rise of the ancient Egyptian Empire. And the strange thing is, usually when a civilization first appears, it's not advanced. It takes time to evolve and advance. And the weird thing, or the strange thing about the Egyptians is they appeared as this powerful, advanced race. They suddenly appeared and they were already advanced. They didn't need to grow. They were there already, the most advanced civilization that the world had seen. And over time, they devolved. And this could partly be because Egypt was never a rainforest. It was never a desert. Sorry, when the pyramids were built, it was more like a jungle. Africa was in a very different climate at the rise of the Egyptian Empire. So the pyramids would have been surrounded by rainforest, by green as far as the eyes can see, much like the Mayan cities of today are surrounded by trees and forests and rainforest. And potentially the reason that the Egyptian Empire fell or collapsed was because of the change to the climate that dried up sources, that dried up, Egypt, essentially. And all across, we see just the pyramids of Giza. Well, actually, there's 22 pyramids that run along the River Nile. And this is very significant in many ways. And the pyramids of Giza are especially significant because the measurements, and they actually have 9 sides. The pyramids, each side is actually made of 2 sides, not 1. So they're very, very specifically built to very specific measurements. And those measurements, when you calculate them, they add up to the exact measurements of the Earth. And the measurements are determined by the Earth itself. So the ancient Egyptians built these massive structures as powerhouses, and they're made of a conductive mineral as well. In the stone, there is a conductive mineral that conducts energy, conducts electrical energy. And it's theorized that the pyramids and Mayan cities and monolithic structures or megalithic structures all around the globe are actually powerhouses or battery sources that harness energy. And there was actually a piece of pottery found in Egypt that had a copper coil inside. And when you pour grape juice into this and you spin it, it generates electricity. And this could power a modern light bulb. Ancient Egyptian technology could power 20th century technology. And that speaks wonders to the power of the ancient races of the ancient world, that they had advanced, what we call advanced technology, like light bulbs and electricity. They had it potentially 15, 20,000 years ago, which is now more likely for the pyramids to have been built. We know the pyramids were built before the Great Flood, and the Great Flood was at least 10 to 15,000 years ago. And it's incredible to think that ancient civilizations were perhaps more advanced than we are today. Imagine if we harnessed the information or the knowledge or rediscovered that information today. What kind of world would we live in? But the ancient world was a very different place to what we are now. We are formed in such a way that we can't go back to that way of living. We can't go back to that mindset. But what we can do is we can look to the morals of how they lived. We can look to their belief systems and how they appreciated the earth. And I'm not saying, we shouldn't go back to maybe sacrifice or whatever, because that's not necessary. And it's an interesting one when you get into sacrifices. Were they sacrificing to gods or were they sacrificing to aliens? Was this a way of proving their loyalty to these alien races? But that's a conversation for another day. But if we could find a way to transform our society to regain the morals or the structure of the ancient world, imagine the power that we could harness with our technology as we have it now, combined with the technology as we had it then. Could we use that technology to travel interstellar, to colonize other planets like Mars and the moon? And speaking of the moon, there is stories all across the globe, ancient stories, that speaks of the time before the moon. The time before the moon. So this suggests that through human history, the moon wasn't there. It didn't exist. And suddenly it was put there. And when in one of the Apollo missions, they put seismographs on the moon, on the surface of the moon, so they could measure the activity in the lunar surface. And what happened was miraculous. Every single time a lander either landed or took off from the lunar surface, the moon itself rang like a bell for 55 minutes, every single time consistently. 55 minutes, the moon rang like a bell every time something struck the surface. Now, this suggests that the moon isn't actually a solid ball of rock. And the other strange thing is the moon is made from the same material as the Earth, which means the hypothesis of Theia, an Earth-like planet colliding with Earth, and the moon was created from the leftovers and the debris from Theia. It renders that theory inconsistent, because Theia would have had to have been made from the exact material as the Earth, which is highly unlikely. So we see the moon is a twin to Earth. It's identical to Earth in its makeup, chemically, and so this suggests that the moon came from Earth and nowhere else. It didn't come from another planet. It didn't come from asteroids. It didn't come from space dust. It didn't come from anything. It came from the Earth. But there is no way that could happen, because where's the big chunk of moon that came out of the Earth? And you can say that again. Maybe it was an explosion on the Earth, and the Earth exploded and then created a moon or whatever. Okay, sure. But the moon, there are so many inconsistencies with the actual moon, and the fact that we have stories from ancient history, talking about a time before the moon. And in much folklore, especially in Europe as well, in a lot of folklore, there is talks of a time before the moon. In Eastern culture as well, a time before the moon and a time when the moon was placed. And there's some illustrations. If you think of the Death Star from from Star Wars, and just using that as an example, if you think of the look of the Death Star, it's this big ball, this big circular ball. Now imagine if that is a big size celestial kind of object. Now imagine if the moon is potentially something like that, wrapped in, I think it's 22 miles of rock. Now when the moon was struck, it rings for 55 minutes, but those vibrations go down 22 miles. And this was hypothesized by Russian scientists, saying if the moon was hollow, because again, there are craters in the moon that are hundreds of miles wide, but they're very shallow. And now, if a big celestial object was to strike a solid ball of rock, creating a crater hundreds of miles wide, it should also be at least tens of kilometers or tens of miles or more deep. But actually, it stops, and there's bulges within these craters. So the crater should dip down. The crater should go like that. But in fact, what happens is it goes down, but then at the base of the crater, it goes back up again. It's like conical or cylindrical, if you like. So this suggests that there is some kind of hard material underneath the moon that is shaped like a sphere or a ball. So this makes sense if there is more to the moon than we can see. And again, this has only been hypothesized and theorized. And it is possible because the moon is tidally locked, which again doesn't make sense why the moon would be tidally locked, because of its position to Earth and its size, it does not add up. So it is possible for there to be a potentially advanced civilization on what we call the dark side of the moon. Now, the dark side of the moon isn't actually dark. It's because the moon's orbit on its own axis is the same as its orbit around Earth. So we only see one side, but the moon sees the sun sees every side of the moon. It's just we can only see one side. So it is possible for there to have been an ancient alien civilization on the moon for the last 100,000 years or more, or however long the moon was there, which sparks many, many questions, because there is a huge rise in UFO sightings and UFO activity, magnetic activity all around the world. There is the Zona de Silencio in the Zone of Silence in Mexico, Lake Titicaca in Peru, and all across the globe there are hotspots of magnetic activity. Around Colorado as well, there's a lot of UFO sightings in the mountains of Colorado, and all across the Rockies, the Grand Canyon. These sites have huge amounts of UFO activity. And this just kind of speaks of something. There are magnetic hotspots around the globe that have the most amount of UFO sightings. Now, could these magnetic fluxes in the Earth's field, as well as megalithic structures all around the globe, and even geoglyphs, which are just huge illustrations carved into stone, carved into the land, and there are some that are hundreds and hundreds of miles, in size, and it's like these were designed to be seen from the sky, because when you're on the ground, you can't see them because they're on flat plains. A lot of them, they're on flat plains or at the top of mountains, where an entire mountaintop, the summit of an entire mountain, has been carved flat, almost like a landing strip, like an airfield. Why? They were designed to be seen from the skies. So who were they signaling? Were they signaling somebody? Was it a roadmap? Was it a way of ancient aliens navigating around the globe? It makes sense, because why would ancient people carve images into the surface of the earth if they couldn't see them? They were designed to be seen from up there, from the sky. And I'm not trying to, go into like alien conspiracy, because this is more being proven to be more fact than fiction. And ancient alien theorists and archaeologists around the globe are starting to agree that there has to be something more than just humans living on Earth and evolving. There has to be some kind of exterior influence, because human activity throughout the ages doesn't make sense on its own. There has to be some kind of influence. And the fact that God's suddenly appeared from somewhere kind of gives light to the fact of potential ancient aliens around the world as well. But the moon could potentially be a base for this, and there is some interesting stuff happening with the UFO disclosure, especially from NASA as well, and Area 51. For many years, Area 51 was denied; its existence was denied, and then all of a sudden they say, actually, okay, it does exist, but we can't tell you what goes on in there. There has been many weird sightings around the globe that have never been explained. They're given strange stories like, it's a training exercise, but training exercise with technology that we've never seen before. And they say, it was a prototype of a new plane, but where's the technology come from? Because these are very strange lights, huge objects, huge series of lights. And again, there's towns in the US that have one town in specific, I can't remember the name of it, but experienced massive, just a few years ago, massive activity in the skies, massive rumbling that was almost deafening. And there's even footage of almost an entire town, by the looks of it, standing on the street, looking up at the sky, going, "What the hell is that?" And with this one video, you can see it's not a doctored image. There are hundreds of videos of the exact same event, and it was just series of lights in the sky over this town, and nothing has been said about it. The government haven't really come out and said, "Oh, it was a training exercise," or anything. It's just been kind of ignored and brushed under the carpet. And there just happens to be government facilities not too far away. So perhaps we are on the verge of contact. Perhaps we have already had contact, and we are on the verge of that being disclosed to the general public. I guess we will never know until it happens, eh? And this is the beauty of our world, is that we never know until it happens. We can guess, we can theorize, we can hypothesize, but we never know until it really happens. And I guess this is what we've been going through our history, thinking, I'm going to see it for myself. I'm going to do my research. I'm going to learn, or I'm going to discover. I'm going to explore. I'm going to create something and be innovative and save the human race. This is why we have explorers and innovatives and genius creators, because we're not waiting for it to happen on its own. And this is the beauty of advanced civilization, is we're no longer waiting for the earth to do something miraculous. We are doing the miraculous. We're creating miracles. Right now, people are being kept alive that otherwise would have been dead. And you can look at this in two ways. One, are we affecting the natural cycle of the earth? Because disease and death is designed to depopulate certain species. If a disease is rampant in, say, cows, what happens is they die. We don't try to save all the cows. We'll try and stop the infection spreading. But we're not going to save all of the cows. We will allow all the cows. It just plays out, and we will try and save it. Or if a tree species, trees get diseased, we don't try to destroy the disease. We might try and save as many trees as we can. And again, this is the human resistance to the natural cycle. Because in nature, if a tree's diseased, that disease will just spread to the forest, and then all the trees will die, and that forest will then get transformed into a new environment. But human activity is stopping that. Trees get diseased. What do? We cut down an entire forest and get rid of the trees to stop the disease spreading further, which in a way could be good for the planet, but also it is affecting the natural cycle of our world, which could have dire consequences in the future. And again, the human race, I think by the end of the century, we will have 11 billion people on Earth. And if we are already using up all of the world's natural resources within 8 months in 2020, imagine if another 5 billion people, almost twice the amount of people on Earth now, imagine we would use up all of our resources in probably minus 8 months. We would be living in constant surplus. So there is really an issue there to be addressed, in that perhaps we are keeping people alive immorally. And we have and again, this is in no way to say that people should be left to die, but it is talking of the natural cycle. We have a very aging population, which again, population of Earth is causing so many problems. Humans are consuming more than we can harness from the world, and our energy consumption is through the roof. But the benefit of this is I think Morocco is set to become the top exporter of green energy to Europe, to Southern Europe. And it's incredible. They have huge solar farms, the biggest solar farm in the world in Morocco. And that's soon, I think by 2030, is set to be the biggest and green energy importer in Southern Europe. It's fantastic. I mean, if you put solar farms across Africa, you could power the entire planet with green energy, more energy than we'll ever need, and even enough energy to get us off the planet as well, to other planets. But the fact is, it still remains population, because you can say, well, there's plenty of space for us. That's fair enough. There is more than enough space. The entire human population can fit into less than one state of America. You know, or even England, if you take England and you put every single person on the planet side by side, shoulder by shoulder, they would fit in England, and there would still be room. The issue is that we have big buildings and things that take up more space than we need. And this is the importance of minimalist living as well, living with the minimum, living with only what you need as opposed to just what you want or what you can have. But the thing is with population is we're growing and we're growing and growing and growing, and we're not addressing that actually the human race is growing so quick that we can't handle it. And in Japan, it's kind of a custom now. And again, there was an issue with population in Japan not long ago, less than 100 years ago. So what happened is now it's common custom to only have 2 children. And you see in the Western world and even some of the Eastern world, you see families with 10 kids. And now imagine if 7 billion people had 10 children. It would cause dire consequences. If 7 billion people have 10 children, all those 10 children live to 100 years old. Okay. So you got 70 billion people living to 100. Well, where are all those 70 billion people getting their food from? So in Japan, it's now common custom to only have 2 children, and their population has stabilized. They don't have an aging population because their level of aging population is more or less equal to their young population. So their children and their teenagers or their adolescents is more or less equal to the elderly. And then you have countries in the UK where the elderly far outweigh the younger population of the world. The same in America as well. If you look at the amount of, and again, this is in no way saying that people should be left to die, but it's looking at society and our species in general. In the natural world, when an animal gets to an old age, it is not left to fend for itself, but when the time comes, when a disease comes or an illness comes, it's said, okay, well, it's your time. This is what nature has decided. And humans take that a step further and say, well, this is what nature's decided, but I'm not deciding yet. I'm going to keep myself alive. So are we really just prolonging the process of death, or are we prolonging life? This is the question of medicine and modern science: is it morally right to keep ourselves alive longer? And I don't mean morally right for, say if I was to contract a disease that would kill me, that's not to say, it's like, oh, well, we're not giving you treatment. You should die. Not necessarily to say that. It's the morality of humanity as a whole. Because imagine if nobody died from disease, nobody died from illness, nobody died from anything. Where would we put the people? And what this means is that there would be a period where actually people would have to be culled, like how we cull badgers in the UK. We'd have to cull people. We would have to kill off people. Kind of like like World War II. We don't really want a repeat of that. But the reality is, eventually, it's going to come down to either a huge portion of the population is going to have to be killed off, or we will have to evacuate a large portion of the human race to another planet or space stations. And how realistic is this in the short space of time that we have? By 2050, we'll have over 9 billion people on the planet, and we are currently already using up surplus within 8 months. This spells catastrophe for human race unless we address this. Would it be wise to place a limit on how many children somebody can have? And there is this thing of having freedom of medical treatment. You have the choice of what to put in your body. But what if, as a way of preserving species or preserving the human race, once you've had 2 children, you are then, you have a tablet that makes you infertile, or you have a contraception that just makes you infertile. You don't need to take a pill every day. You don't need to have injections or whatever. You just have one intervention and you're infertile. You've already had your 2 children. And for the survival of the human race, now it's important that you do not have any more children. Now, this would cause uproar if the government suddenly said, okay, right, when you have 2 children, you have to be made infertile. You have no choice. This is compulsory. This is mandated. Society would uproar. They would fight against it. Although actually the reason behind this is to save the future of the human race, which is ultimately what we want to do. We have to preserve our species for future generations. Otherwise, there's no point in having children because they're going to die anyway. So let's save them the torture by not having loads of children. And this is how society is changing. And actually, with the quality of life, as we improve quality of life, people are actually having children further on in their lives. So as opposed to maybe 30 years ago, where it would be common custom, to potentially have a baby in your early 20s or even maybe younger. Now it's becoming more of a common custom to have children in your 30s, where you're you're almost at your limit of childbearing. But that's when you decide to have children, because you want to enjoy your quality of life, and then you spend the final chapter of your life kind of supporting your children. You've already lived your life, and this really makes more sense, because you've lived your life, you've experienced the world, you've gained the information that you need, and now you can pass that information down to your children. And as we are prolonging the childhood, 100, 200 years ago, children would go to work, and now you can have 20-year-olds that are still in education, still learning, still growing. You're still classing them as children. So as we prolong childhood and teenagehood and adolescence, we need to prolong our childbearing in the sense of limiting not just the number of children we have, but also when we have them. And this is happening naturally as the quality of life increases around the globe. People are having children older and older ages, because they just they don't feel the need to have children before they've lived their life. And this is the new thing. You don't want to have children too young. You want to live your life. And this is kind of a message that is conveyed from the older generation to the younger generation, which is very important in preserving the human species and preserving us and our survival, is making sure that we don't overpopulate ourselves before it's too late. And again, because that would mean that we would have to potentially kill off people or cull the human race, which nobody would want. So there are solutions to all of our problems, and we can access them now. And it is curious to explore whether the Great Reset is actually a solution. Is the Great Reset that has been put forward by the World Economic Forum, by the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, and various other members of government and power and political and influential status are putting forward, is the Great Reset the solution to humanity's problems, or is it the start of a more grave and sinister issue? And I guess it is a question that we can't answer. We cannot know this until we either accept or don't reset. And here's the dilemma. If we decline the Great Reset and we rebel and revolt against the Great Reset, and we refuse to integrate with a new society, what could happen is by the end of the century, humans would be struggling to survive. The world will be beyond repair by humans. And ultimately, what will happen is humans will die out, but the world will rebuild itself, because that's how it works. The nature can survive without us, but we can't survive without nature. We rely on the symbiosis of the world around us to provide everything we need. So if we decline the Great Reset, we could end up destroying our entire civilization, our entire world as we know it. On the other hand, the Great Reset could destroy civilization as we know it. And again, it's meant to destroy civilization as we know it, because it's meant to transform society into a new way of being. It's meant to give us a new essence to how we live in society, how we function, how we treat the natural world, and how we treat the man-made world as well. So it is the same dilemma either way. Either way, it could destroy life as we know it. But the Great Reset is designed to do just that. And they're being very upfront. They're not, there's no deceit, as we can see. They are straight up saying, you will have nothing. You will be happy about it. You will give up your rights. We will give you more. But we have to take away the current rights to replace them with new ones, better ones. And this does make sense, because at the moment, the freedoms that we have can be very destructive. At the same time, this is taking away our freedom to decide what's right and what's wrong. And instead, we're being told this is right, this is wrong. At the same time, we are like children, and we don't know what's right and what's wrong for the planet. We know what's right and wrong for us, but we don't necessarily know what's right and wrong for the rest of the planet around us. So perhaps it's not such a bad thing for a governing system to say, okay, well, we have to do this because this is how we're going to save the planet. And we're at a pivotal point in society at the moment. We're at a pivotal point in our evolution, because right now we could be about to destroy our entire culture, our civilization, our world, but we could be about to rebuild a new one far better than ever before. So I want to leave you with this question. When it comes to the Great Reset being initiated, society resetting, rebuilding itself, when it comes to our way of life being changed forever, will you be resisting this change out of fear that it could be negative in its outcome? Or will you be an innovator who embraces these changes no matter what happens for you personally, with the knowing that it has the potential to transform the lives of millions of humans to come after you when you cease to exist from this planet? There will still be humans who need a world, who need a place to live in safety, without fear that their world is going to end or be destructed at any moment. So will you resist, or will you embrace these new changes in this new world that's about to come? Because we truly are about to step into a brand new world. And this is coinciding with what became known as the Great Awakening, or the Ascension 2020 to 2021, coinciding with the New World Order, or Agenda 21. Are these linked? Is the global spiritual awakening coinciding with the global Great Reset, away from the globalist economy and the globalist civilization that we've built over the last couple hundred years? Or is it bound for another reason, another purpose? This is a question that nobody can answer for you. So do some research, look at the facts, read books, read research, read papers, read articles, and decide what information you feel is correct and what is right for you and what feels right. Because nobody else can tell you that. Nobody else can make your mind up for you. So that is all for In Conversation with Aaron Ayden today. If you found value in this, if you enjoy what I talk about, if you find it interesting, then perhaps you may want to support me on Patreon, patreon.com /Aaron Ayden 3. the link. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, the link will be in the description. If you're on Spotify, then you can just search up patreon.com/Aaron Ayden 3, and you can get access to courses, meditations, readings, much more on there, as well as supporting me in this journey to create content for you to enjoy. And you can also send in a one-off donation as well if you found value in this talk today at paypal.me/awaken together. But I will see you very soon. That's it from me.